Welcome into the OBR streaming network where we are back and we are live with the React. My name is Brad Ward. The man next to me is the one and only Pete Smith. You can follow him on X at _Pete Smith _. What is happening, Pete? How are you, sir?
I'm good. Our regional nightmare is over. We still have 3 kickers, and Elijah Moore is at OTAs, so we are in good shape.
He showed up. The man is back. He showed up. I'm excited that Elijah is there. Can I get some quick thoughts on the contract of the day? The Texans, Nico Collins gets signed to what? 24 million APY?
Yeah, we got to wait to see the details on it, but it's interesting. We keep seeing these contracts come out. Certainly, Nico Collins is a fantastic receiver.
Yeah.
The question with him is, can he keep it going? I don't see any reason he couldn't. I think he can be their number one ultimately. But they brought in Diggs at least for this year. We'll see where it goes from there. But it certainly makes it look, smart on the Browns' part. Yes, it's a bet. Yes, they're saying, even though he hasn't done it yet for the Browns, that Jerry Jeudy is going to be a playmaker. Decidedly less money. The more of these contracts we see, as long as Jerry Jeudy plays well, I think the happier people are going to be with ultimately what that contract sort of looks like.
Yeah.
Because his contract's up to 4 years or something like that. It's basically if everybody gets their money in this situation, Jerry Jeudy will make as much money in his whole contract as Nico Collins will make in his contract in 3 years.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks better the more these contracts come out, so that's a good thing. We've got 3 videos to cover tonight. It's good stuff, interesting stuff we're going to break down. So we are live on YouTube. And so, feel free to go ahead and hit like and subscribe. That will be, I know it says All Eyes on Cleveland now, but that will be the OBR account. So if you subscribe and like it, that will be the OBR's YouTube account. So you do not have to worry about subscribing again. You'll be locked in.
No, he's serious. This is not a grift just to get him more followers.
It's not. It's not a grift. I am dead serious. I would not lie to you. Promise. We are live on YouTube again, and in the process of making that the account, so dive on in. And speaking of diving on in, let's dive on into our first video here tonight, Pete. This is going to be back to QB Unplugged, but this time Quincy Avery and QB1, Deshaun Watson, breaking down each opponent on the Browns' schedule. Interesting little breakdown here to start us off tonight. Get D. Watt's thoughts on the schedule and each opponent. Would we rather? You're good, brother. We appreciate all you Twitch guys. It's great. You can watch Twitch, YouTube, doesn't matter. Either one is good with us. If you're on X, head on over to one of those and hop on in and subscribe. We appreciate you for doing that. All right, let's get into this. Back to what we were doing here.
Running down the schedule a little bit. Preseason, we ain't gonna get into that because I know y'all ain't really playing. Only 3 games. I do want to see you. There's no game I want to see. I would say Minnesota at Green Bay.
Hold on, I gotta stop this before we even get into this. How did the Browns draw at Seattle preseason game 3, Pete? What the hell is that? I've never seen such a thing.
Well, normally the Browns travel very regionally. They usually play teams like the Bears and the Lions. In fact, obviously, as most people would know, the barge is always on the line when the Browns and Lions get together. You have some power over who you play in the preseason, and I think this move is entirely deliberate. I cannot prove it, but I'm pretty confident that based on what they had the issues with last year, they decided, hey, we're going to try to tackle some of the road issues in the preseason. It's their only road game. It happens to be the quote unquote dress rehearsal, which I hope is not a dress rehearsal because I don't want to see any starters in it. But nevertheless, the Browns seem to be proactive in trying to solve some of their road issues and trying to get ahead of that, and they're going to go through the process of taking the trip to basically as far away as possible, going to Seattle, and trying to get ahead of it, because the longest trip they'll take all season is Las Vegas, and Denver's second.
Yeah.
They don't do a whole lot of cross country travel, so this is it. But look, they were 8-1 at home last year, which is phenomenal. They were 3-5 on the road. And the talk throughout the season was, this is a completely different team at home than it is on the road. The defense wasn't as effective on the road. Now, some of that had to do with quarterback play and who they were playing on the road in some of these games, and the fact that the Browns got an easier slate, perhaps, at home. At home. But here's the thing: like, the Browns, their most difficult games this year are at home. It's not to say the road will be easy, but if you're just comparing which games are you're locking into and going, wow, this is going to be tough, they're typically at home. So all the more reason for them to try to attack this and figure it out and come up with something to get them better on the road, because they need to capitalize on those games. They've got 3 road games in a row at one point, followed by 3 home games in a row. They've got underwhelming NFC East teams they'd like to take out on the road. There's just a lot of opportunity for them to gain ground. And look, we know what the AFC North looks like and how competitive it's going to be. The AFC in general, it's very easy to get lost in the fact that there are only 3 wild cards, like 4 division winners, and that's the easiest way for the Browns to go. But if you don't get there, it's 3 wild cards, and it's very easy to think, well, the 3 other AFC North teams may get all 3, but you don't want to fall in that trap where you're sitting there on week 17, week 18 going, holy crap, how do we sort of crawl in? In addition to the fact that, if you win the division, your seeding is better and you guarantee yourself the ability to play at home. So to me, that is the Browns saying, we're going to try to deal with this now, try to figure this out and come up with something to deal with the road issue, because I can't think of a distance they've traveled this far. I think Tampa may have been one year, and that's, it's still nothing compared to Seattle. There's no time zone changes or anything like that. Seattle is obviously a different deal.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got, a lot of reaction here in the chat. Pete, real quickly, Charlie, Chuck, and A to Z Crypto. Yes, you can subscribe to that channel. That will be the OBR channel. This is not a grift, as Pete said. So you can go ahead and click on that button and you will be subscribed. All right. Thank you. That's a great answer. I didn't even think of that, Pete, that they would actually try to work out some logistical things and get on the road there. And that's probably a good idea, because you get the full week off in between. So it's interesting.
Yep. That's the other big reason is, because they've changed it, even though I prefer having 4 preseason games, just because I actually like watching the depth. And I'm actually really excited to watch some of the guys that are fighting for spots this year. Like Isaiah McGuire is somebody that may be inactive on game days and still be a good player. Yeah. Like, the preseason may be the best chance for me to watch a guy like that. There are any number of players I want to see in those games. The Zach Zinters of the world and some of these guys who are, not projected to be in the lineup this year. And that's the best chance to get them. But having said that, yes, you get to go all the way out to the West Coast. You get to come back. You have that bye week. You make the roster cut downs and you figure it out. So it's a good idea if you think you can actually come up with a solution. I have no idea what that's going to look like or what the Browns think that's going to be, but I applaud the move if they think they've got something to work on, that can help, because any edge you can get, anything you can do to help yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting. All right, let's dive in. Quincy's going to take us through the schedule here with D4 and get some thoughts on this stuff, and we'll stop it occasionally here and comment on some things that we notice.
But if you play in Minnesota, I'm going to be there. Yeah. Week 1, Cowboys. Micah versus Njoku. I'm excited for that. Add a little color to the trash talk that took place this past Super Bowl, so that'll be good.
Definitely.
Clemson quarterback versus Clemson quarterback, week 2.
Yep. No, I think that Dallas game is we spoke on before. It's just a great opportunity for both teams to be able to show what we got, compete at a high level, You really treat this like a primetime game for sure. So it's good. And then going down to Jacksonville, a team I'm familiar with in that conference down there. It'll be a little hot, but it'll be all good for
It's gonna be hot.
us.
Giants, you know what I'm saying? We gonna be in Cleveland, back in Cleveland, New
Yep.
York Giants.
Back in Cleveland.
Interested to see the quarterback. I want to see what their team looks like now. You know what I'm saying? No Saquon. Seems like they got a quarterback competition.
Really?
Yeah. They brought in
Wait,
Drew Lock. Drew Lock.
Didn't know that. I didn't know he
Quinty
was
loves
competing.
him some Drew
Okay.
Lock.
You know what
Well-
race you just made?
Go ahead and pause this real quick. This is the most natural reaction because this is what everybody else in the world is thinking about this quarterback competition. Yes, they understand that Daniel Jones is probably not very good and should not have been taken 6th overall and should not have gotten that contract extension and should not have gotten half a dozen other things. But then to say, well, maybe Drew Lock will be that guy really tells you how little they think of Daniel Jones. But there's a lot of people who have no idea that Drew Lock is there.
Yeah.
And that he's potentially competing for the job because there was talk during the draft that it was the Giants were trying to find a quarterback they thought was clearly better than Daniel Jones and Drew Lock because they were openly considering both. Now, the other part of this whole thing is there are people who are attached to the Giants who think that if Dallas messes around and lets Dak walk, that the Giants are going to go sign Dak. And that'll be their answer. And that's part of the reason they were willing to take the wide receiver they did with 6th pick overall, which if it works out, they're in great shape.
Yeah.
I just don't know if anyone's still going to have a job at that point if things go as badly as they could. And certainly the Browns are looking to put it on them quick. Week 3, let's go. Their defensive line is phenomenally talented. They've got a guy who should have been an all-pro in DeMarcus in Dexter Lawrence. They've got both edge rushers, Kayvon Thibodeau, who needs to come back and have a bounce-back season after sort of a sophomore slump. And then they made the trade to go get the defensive end from Carolina. So they've got a lot of guys that can, attack the quarterback. But that is about all they've got on that team right now. So it'll be interesting to see if the Browns can't take advantage of that. But it's an interesting test just from the standpoint of between them and the Cowboys and the Jags. All of them have defensive lines that could give you trouble, and Deshaun Watson needs to sort of have the Browns and Deshaun Watson, I should say both, need to have a plan to get the ball out so he doesn't take stupid hits or he doesn't try to extend plays that he shouldn't. Get the ball out of his hands and let him go. But Deshaun Watson's reaction to this is everybody's reaction to this for the most part.
Yeah. What? Really? There's a quarterback competition? Yeah. All right. So here we go.
You remember when
What?
Lil Wayne? Remember when Lil Wayne? They were giving him a list of the top rappers of all time, and he's like Gucci. Shout out my nigga Gucci.
Shout out to Drew, man. Shout out my dog Drew.
We're gonna be in Vegas. Drew Lock, one of the best basketball players in the NFL. I'll have to give my dog his kudos.
Yeah.
We're gonna go to Vegas. I say we because anytime you in Vegas, I'm in Vegas. I gotta get on the table.
I'm already know where you is the whole weekend.
Exactly. Washington Commanders. That's gonna be interesting because I think Jaden will probably be starting by then. And that defense versus a rookie quarterback and Jim Schwartz is gonna be. It's gonna be interesting. I'll just say that it's gonna be interesting because I think you can see whatever you want in college. You've never seen a defense like Jim Schwartz in that pressure package.
Yeah.
Especially when you don't know who your left tackle is.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, vets that's experienced, that's hungry. You know what I'm saying? And these guys, hey, they're gonna be piped up every week too.
Piped up.
LSU has better tackles
you
than
gonna have to figure
Washington
out how
does right now. That is going to be an ugly. That's going to be a very ugly situation if that doesn't get solved.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think that? Do you expect Jaden to be starting by then?
Remind me who their other quarterback is, since they shipped the other dude off to Seattle.
I don't know. I mean, who is their quarterback?
Yeah, so that's the thing. I would assume they're just going to be like, look, we're going with it, and they're going to try to come up with something to get a left tackle. If I don't know what Bakhtiari's contract says, I think he's a free agent, and he sounds like he might try to play. I'll be curious if they try to get him. But Yeah, I mean, they might try to move the guy who had been playing right guard to left tackle, and Sam Cosby has at least been raised, but it's a bad situation for Washington on the offensive line. They haven't been good for a bit. And it's a tough spot to put a rookie quarterback in, but like, what else are you going to do with that team? I mean, for me, I would Marcus Mariota. So whether they want Marcus Mariota to be playing or not, Jaden Daniels will be playing by week 5. So
and Sam Hartman and Jeff Driscoll, just
listen, that's of the pantheon of great backup quarterbacks. Those guys are in there. So look, Marcus Mariota, I don't think he would stay healthy in that scenario. So I expect we will see Jaden Daniels. And yes, I would. You have to be sitting there thinking, for whatever Washington does, I think Dan Quinn will make that defense better. But the Browns defense has to murder the Washington offense. Like, this should be a showcase shutout type performance. It's tough on the road and stuff, but still, like, this is the type of game where if the Browns have sort of figured out their issues on the road, this is where they put their foot down on the defensive side.
Yeah, maybe everybody can get a couple of sacks. Everybody can eat, maybe. There you go. That's what they hope for. Yeah, figure out the issues on the road. That's a great chance to do it, too, on top of it in a regular season game against what like you said, a struggling line. All right, let's continue here. I think he talks about the defense.
That's just one thing you have to do.
That's where you got to start. You got to start with that.
Get your mind wrapped around that.
Ain't no protection this week. Protection is 95. Slide his way, and we doubling him for sure.
We don't care where they bringing pressure from. We blocking him.
2. Let's block him.
Then we got Philadelphia Eagles. I always think that's going to be interesting because just remember seeing that preseason, right? Y'all practice together so much like last year. They got a new coordinator, right? A new OC. I want to see how that looks. He's talking about using more motion.
Right. They got a new DC too, right?
Yeah, I think so. They got a lot going on. A lot of moving and shaking.
Yeah, a lot of moving parts. That'll be fun. A good environment to play in.
Cincy at the crib, Baltimore at the crib, back-to-back divisional games.
I like that. Start off the divisional games at home. Good. That's good.
Then we got Chargers at the crib, so you ain't got to go to the West Coast. I really like y'all schedule, just how it's set up for y'all. You ain't doing a lot of traveling.
Nah, especially early on. We get the bye week. Week 10? But
I guess Vegas is your only real like long trip. You got Vegas,
but it's long. But at least it starts off. It's not in the middle between Washington and Philly.
Yeah.
So we go to the West Coast, or we got home, we go to the West Coast, come back, and now we still on East Coast time for the next 2 weeks. And then we come home divisional.
Chargers, going to have a new mentality, new head coach. Look forward to that. The Saints at the Saints. Man.
All right. So he mentions the travel there. We covered this on the Thursday show, Pete. So the Browns have the 8th, they have most difficult according to schedule, according to last year's records, and like second most difficult according to Vegas's projected wins. But they have the 8th easiest in terms of travel. Now, naturally, the West Coast teams do more travel, I think, naturally. It's built in. But the Browns have the 8th easiest in terms of travel. They travel 13,998 miles in just 12 time zones, while the worst team is the Chargers, and they travel 26,803 miles through 36 time zones, Pete. That is a huge difference, and a lot of those teams out west do a lot more travel. So when you're looking at travel and you just look at the schedule itself, I mean, he's right. If he's measuring it on travel, it's not too bad.
Well, part of that is no international games for the Browns.
Correct.
Traditionally, I mean, don't get me wrong, going on the road is not easy, but traditionally it's easier to go east than it is west. Just how that works in terms of how it tolls on the body and the difference in schedule and stuff like that. But look, it's a tough way to operate. And whether it's international or some of these other things, you have to account for it. I mean, so much of this, this used to be a better indicator of like strength of schedule than a lot of things, just how the amount of travel you have. But it's tougher because you have so many more Thursday games and now Wednesday games with Christmas and all this other stuff that sort of adds into it. And now because the NFL either deliberately or whatever reason does a crappy job sort of balancing it out, where you've got team X is coming off 7 days rest and team Y is coming off 4 days rest. Like, that's a huge difference. Like,
Yes.
they have not figured it out. So there are teams that are a huge deficiency relative to that. And if memory serves, like, the Browns benefited from that last year. I don't think they do this year, though. I don't know off the top of my head where they are on that, but I think they are at a net negative in terms of sort of rest versus the opponent relative to some of these games, which is trickier. So look, not traveling as much is great. It's certainly an advantage if you're a team like, you go to the NFC East or something where you can take a bus to about 3 of your opponents. You're in a pretty good spot. So you'll take what you can get in terms of that stuff. By the way, the Saints got to be a win off I know New Orleans is not an easy place to play. They stink, 1, and 2, it's coming off the bye week, and 3, they stink.
And 4, that you're going into short week following against the Steelers. So, yeah, I mean, got to win there. They really would have done the Browns a nice favor if they, I don't, but if they got the 2 Thursday night games and they're closer together than anybody else that has the 2 Thursday or a Thursday and a Christmas or whatever. So they kind of screwed them on that part of it. Although Deshaun seems to look at that as an advantage, but either way, I can't see how it is playing on short weeks like that. But they could have I don't know. I'm sure maybe there's something scheduled there, but wouldn't it make sense to have that Steelers game on Thursday night coming off the bye week instead of the other way around to do them a little bit of a favor?
Yes, it would. It also would make sense just having teams that are going to have multiple Thursday games playing back to back.
Yeah.
These are all things you could do. They're not going to.
No.
They seem quite content to create this disadvantage for certain teams unnecessarily. There are a lot of ways they could fix this or deal with it in a more equitable manner. And it's not easy, don't get me wrong. Coming up the schedule is a difficult endeavor with all the other things you have to account for. But still,
sure,
there are ways they could do some of these things that would make it more realistic and save the bodies of the players, as opposed to then, coming out and talking about player safety when you're doing this stuff, which is the exact opposite.
Yep, very true.
I remember the last time he played in New Orleans.
Oh, that was so fun.
That game was
heartbreaking.
Rocking. It was
definitely rocking.
That game was rocking. Night game, piped up. That was a game. That was one of the funniest games I've ever been to. Unfortunate that you lost.
Nah, it was fun for sure.
Then the Thursday night game, then the Monday night game. I get what you're saying. Like, that's a lot of break. 21st to the 2nd.
Yeah.
Then at Pittsburgh, the Chiefs got to come to the crib. They got to block Miles. Every time I think about like a quarterback who passes a bunch, you just got to block Miles. That's a tough stretch. So the Chiefs and the Thursday night game with the Bengals, whew, those are two high level quarterbacks back to back.
No, definitely. And then we get a Sunday night game, Miami.
And then that Baltimore Ravens game could be at any time. That could be for all the marbles. I'm hoping it's like y'all playing to win the division, and it's just like a Sunday night game. Everybody's coming to watch. But the schedule,
that'll be fun. Schedule, especially the back side of the schedule is definitely fun.
It's gonna be It's a favorable schedule in terms of like the tough teams. You got them for the most part at home. Divisional teams, both places, but
definitely. And it's crazy though, because you get like the strength of schedule, and it's like, oh, this team got I think we had like the number 1 strength of schedule, but you're like, bro, it's the NFL.
Everybody's good.
Like, everyone's good. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think the most important is like, okay, how much traveling we actually got to do, because people don't really count that in. Like going to the West Coast twice or having to spend a whole week out there, like, you got to adapt. You got to get new climates and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's still football. Everybody's good. Just because the team was 0 or 1 and such last year don't mean they can't flip it and go.
Yeah. And I
You know
think a
what I'm
lot of
saying?
people don't
So
understand like the schedule's based on where you ranked in the division last year. If you ranked
yeah,
first in the division, you're gonna play
Barely.
the other.
Yeah, 3 games, right?
Yeah, I mean, it has a small impact, but like, you know who has the easy schedules? The NFC. You know, who has the difficult schedules? The AFC. I mean, it's just the one conference is super loaded, the other conference is not. Like,
Exactly.
that's what it boils down to. If you every team has to play an AFC division and an NFC division. You have to play, or you have to play your own division, and then there's 3 games that get handed out. I think 2 of those might be the based on your schedule, and then the one is like the extra game, which I don't know how that one is governed, because I remember the first year they did it, the Browns randomly got Arizona, and that might be also schedule. Based on your record, I'm not sure, but like, yeah, don't get me wrong. Like, you look at the Bengals and you're like, okay, I get it. It does make a little bit of a difference being 4th versus where the Browns are at, but ultimately the biggest difference in who's got the tough schedules is conference right now. There's no balance whatsoever in that. So I don't care how you set it up. If you got to play the Chiefs, the Dolphins, you've got to play the Steelers, Bengals, and Ravens. Like, those are going to add up over time. If you're trying to talk yourself into the Chargers and all these other teams, yeah, it's no joke. But like, if the Browns lined up the NFC and got to play, the NFC South or the NFC, the NFC North, I think the NFC North will be better this year. But like, compared to some of the divisions in the AFC, I think you're just overall going to be better off. And maybe that gap is closing a bit. But like, here's the thing: you look at it and you go, CJ Stroud goes to the Texans, and the Carolina Panthers are awful and would have been death for whoever was going there. Maybe they can salvage the thing with their quarterback, but ultimately, like, I think whoever ended up in Houston was going to be in a much better spot than whoever ended up in Carolina. Houston just adds to another, the load of quarterbacks in the AFC, and Carolina is just one more in a mediocre batch of NFC quarterbacks.
So the way that I identified it, and the one I'm not sure about is the Jaguars, right? So did they finish second last year?
They finished at best 3rd.
Okay. So maybe that's the random one, because that's not. So they play AFC West and NFC East. So the Jaguars aren't on that. So week 2 is one of those 3. Now the Saints, I do believe, finished second in the NFC South.
Yes, garbage.
So that matches up because of the Browns' second place finish last year, right? And then the Dolphins is the other one.
Maybe the Jags did, because remember, they lost, and then there was like the whole thing about, are the Colts going to pull this out? Of course, they blew it. So I don't know if that made them 3rd ultimately. Yeah. But either way, they only got, that division only got the one playoff team. So, yeah.
So that's your second place schedule, draws you the Saints, the Dolphins, and the Jaguars. So it's not a massive impact, I wouldn't say.
Well, I mean,
it could be worse. First place.
If you were, playing the Colts again, would it be that much of a difference? Maybe, you would say that Trevor Lawrence is a better quarterback right now than certainly Anthony Richardson. Because he hasn't played, but if Anthony Richardson hurt, then Joe Flacco's in there, and who knows? But
exactly.
Yeah, I think it's a small difference. The NFC South thing is absolutely meaningless. The Bucs were okay. Like, the Bucs were a pretty good team. Everybody else was awful. So it made no difference. So yeah, like I said, conference had more to do with the schedule disparity than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's finish up here with these guys.
First place teams in the AFC West, you know what I'm saying, Central.
Right.
Just that's the name of the game.
Yeah, for sure.
You earn that first place, and then you just gotta go run it back. So it'll be fun to see.
So I think the schedule, of course, it comes down to just how many primetime games you got, because everybody looking at that. You want the primetime games.
Y'all
And
got
then
about
it's
4
like,
of them. You got 4 of them
yeah,
joints.
and a lot
Three.
can be adjusted too,
Yeah.
especially on the towards the end. But then it's just like, all right, cool. Who we playing home? Who we playing away? You pretty much already knew that. And then it's like, all right, when do we play them away? You know what I'm saying? Like, imagine playing like us. Like, we got Jacksonville early, so it's gonna be a hot one. So that whole week, hey, you gotta hydrate. You feel me? We're going to a hot environment. But if you had, what I'm saying, you got Miami late in December, so a warm team gotta come to the cold. It's gonna be, however, in January. So yeah, all that stuff take factor.
I might come out to Miami, stretch my legs a little bit. That's about the time I need to see some sun, get some golf in, so I'm ready for it.
Nah, definitely.
Nah, the schedule looks amazing. I'm looking forward to a great season. Let's
Except
start.
Except the games in Cleveland, they're Q. But you can go. Yeah, I mean, you can go to Miami if you want. But
Sure can.
yeah.
So to me, I think Thursday night games should count as basically half a primetime game because
Half a primetime
I
game.
hate Thursday football. I hate it so much. I know the product is going to be crappier.
Yeah.
It's just, the Monday night, the Sunday nights, those are to me a bigger deal. Thursday night, I'm just, one, I hope they win, and Kevin Stefanski has a good record on Thursday night. And two,
Yeah.
just stay alive, like injury-wise. Just don't get killed because the game's just so often just a disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah. And then what was I was just gonna say something about that. I think that week 1 is basically a primetime game. I mean,
Yes, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
That's a big game.
I mean, huge. So, yep. So let's dive into video 2 here, where we get Chris Sims unbuttoned, his infamous top 40 quarterback list he does every year. And we've got his ranking on Deshaun Watson this year. Now, listen, he had Watson ranked 11 last year, I believe, which is he had him higher than anybody. So I believe so. And we'll see what he has this year in store. And then, I do have the surrounding rankings if you want to look at them afterwards to compare. He's got each one of these rankings kind of, he's got a cute little nickname for each little tier. So here we go.
24 now, still in the crap or get off the pot tier. Number 24 for you is?
I can't even believe I'm about to say this. Deshaun Watson,
Wow.
number 24, Cleveland Browns. That's right. Yeah. 3-time Pro Bowler, right? I mean, early part of his career, I was thinking, man, this guy's him, right? He's the man, okay? But yeah, no, it's fallen off. Well, I mean, what's the first thing you want me to say? I mean, he's played what? 11 games, 12 games in 3 years?
So let me give the narrative that
Go
Pete
ahead.
gives, and I
Give
think
them all.
this is true. 2020 was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And when you look at it, you go, okay, what do you mean 2020? We've seen him since then. Yeah, we have seen him since then, but not very much. He's only played 12 games with Cleveland, 6 in 2022.
And really
6 last
11. One of
season.
them was just a few plays.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
Last time he played a full season was 2020 when he led the league in passing yards.
Yes. We are long way from there, right? I don't know what Deshaun Watson is. I don't. When I dig into last year, it's disappointing. I think that's the big thing, right? Here's what I guess I would say is there's still great physical ability, right? Still has a strong arm, still moves well, maybe not like he used to, right? Because he was electric, a few years ago, moving and doing all that, right? But we talked about the 12 games, right? Still that. Can make some special plays, but they're few and far between as compared to what we used to see in the old days, right? And then I think the big thing to me is he's yet to regain his groove overall as a player ever since he had his legal issues and all of that stuff that went down in Houston. He really isn't. I mean, a little bit like I just talked about with Justin Fields, he's being managed still. If you watch him in that offense and you watch Joe Flacco in the offense, you go, they were doing more offense with Joe Flacco and letting it fly. Definitely. Definitely. With Watson, there was a little bit of like, hey, let's get him in a rhythm. Let's run a boot. Let's throw a screen. Let's run another boot. Let's run a really basic 3-step drop play that everybody learns, sophomore year in high school, right? To where I go, this isn't the same guy I used to watch in Houston, where they used to go, put him in the shotgun. He'll carry the fucking team, no problem, right? Now it's like, oh, I hope he can make a few plays for us and, we can justify this huge contract and all of that. But yeah, you watch the games and you go, no, they're calling the game to go, hey, let's get Deshaun in rhythm. Let's get him throwing the ball. Let's do that way, right? And then, I don't think he can carry the squad like he could in the old days. Will he ever again? I don't know, right? I told you, the offense was more complex with Flacco. And then I think the other thing that bothers me when I really started to break it down this weekend even more is just to go, the throwing is so inconsistent. The throwing, right? He can make a wow throw, but like we've talked about with other quarterbacks in the draft process or whatever, there are so many missed errant throws or throws where you go, wait, this guy's open and he has to go to the ground or go behind his back to catch the ball. He has plays, Ahmed, where he throws the football and I swear to you, he's bent over like a pitcher coming off the mound.
I mean, that would indicate to me, and he has had shoulder injuries. That's exactly what it was. Shoulder surgery, rotator cuff injuries. It's like you wonder if there's some permanent damage that has been done or enough damage to where he has changed his throwing motion and now he's less confident.
I think there could be that, and then you couple that with not playing, right? And, he's just kind of lost his comfort level. It's almost like he's lost his natural instincts as a player.
Do you agree with that? Lost his instincts as a player? Because I don't.
Well, it hits on a lot of things I've talked about. Just not playing, as he said, that's a huge factor in all of this. You just need to be on the field. So I had to go back and watch some games from this past year for reasons that had nothing to do with Deshaun Watson, but nevertheless, he's in there. And like between the Ravens game, obviously the second half, and like the game before it was one where I was sort of like, wow, he's doing stuff I want to see him do, which is against Arizona. Particularly in getting the ball to like Jerome Ford on some checkdowns and, letting him do the running as opposed to Watson doing the running. And I thought there was some good stuff in there. I think the ability is there. By and large, if you're asking me to rank Deshaun Watson relative to the other 32 quarterbacks, I have no idea where to put him, which is sort of what he's saying. Like, what are you really basing that on? Because you've seen, franchise quarterback play for one half of one game against an opponent that really mattered. And you've seen some really good play against some teams that weren't good, Tennessee and Arizona. And again, I think he was largely seeing the field well and trying to make the right decisions against Cincinnati to start the season. But the ball, with the weather and everything, nothing was cooperating for either quarterback. And I think that hurt him. But so you can make the case that franchise quarterback play is in there. But given the sheer amount of what has been either poor or mediocre or just average, how do you sort of rank that? So you can get a Watson that's maybe flirting with the top 10 or top 12 quarterbacks with what you've seen in some of that. Yeah. But you can also see a Watson that's in the 20s. Now, do I think 24 is realistic? Probably not. But based on his tiers, I totally understand why he's going this route. And I can't really argue too much with the people who are rating this low because you don't know what he's going to give you. And the sort of through line overall is I can pick out all of these things that he's doing, these moments that are good. I could point out throws that are good. Like his podcast is great for giving you these moments that you're like, wow, that guy's still in there. But if you just take the whole and you average it out over the course of the season, it's not very good. Yeah. Like PFF's grades had him behind Kenny Pickett. Now, I think Deshaun Watson's is certainly a better quarterback than Kenny Pickett, but a lot of that is just being on the field. He's just got to play. And that will take care of it, to me, quite a bit of it. And then, two, it's just he's got to play better. So you get this weird world where you're like, well, I've seen ability that can be up here, and I see stuff that can be down here. So where am I going to put him on these rankings? I have no idea. But, the permanent shoulder injury, I don't really buy.
No.
Because if we're going to go down that road, then we're going to have a really uncomfortable conversation about Joe Burrow and a surgery where the doctor is flat out admitted, basically come out and said, yeah, I've never seen anything like this in a football player. And by the way, there's a real risk that this could be a problem going forward. Like, that's now a conversation you have to have. So if you're going to like sort of project onto Watson, then you sort of, and I don't know where you rank Burrow. I assume he's top 5. That you then have to sort of like wrestle with this. So rather than talking about the injuries, I'm just going to take what I can go off of, which is still a roller coaster and inconsistent play, and say it's safe to put him down here, but there's every reason to believe he can be better than that. He's just got to go out and do it. And so much of that is being on the field.
I think that like, and you know, I have a tendency to lean towards the positive side, but like the comments that, you know, like you just said, the permanent damage to his shoulder. Okay, well, he had shoulder surgery this offseason. So if there was any issues there, that should be fixed, right? You know, the pressure and the stuff he's talking about, the contract, yes, I do feel like there's times where he's trying to, you know, earn it all back with one throw, and has kind of found a point last year where he reeled that in. I don't think he's lost his feel at all. To your point, I think he just needs to be on the field long enough. Like we've seen him be on the field just long enough to, you know, take off and look like the Deshaun we want to see. He mentioned at the beginning, so I'll just say this, I feel confidently that if he remains on the field, like you've said, he'll figure it out. I do. And I think he'll play pretty well. I'm not comparing it to 2020 anymore. That's not what it's about for me. It's about, can he be a top, like we've talked about, can he be a top 12 quarterback? Can he be a top 10, fringe top 10 quarterback? That's what we need from him. The point at the beginning, he mentions that he's not as mobile in his opinion. Do you feel like he's lost a step?
It's possible. I think that has. I'm inclined to think that's the feel element more than anything. Like, you don't have sort of the speed of the game, and then the ability to really anticipate, which plays into your ability to look faster. Like, I don't think he's lost a step in terms of if you just ask him to run the 40. I think he's gonna be pretty much where he was, or 100 yards or whatever. I think he's gonna be pretty fast. I mean, you go back to that Ravens tape where he scrambles with the high ankle sprain. He's moving. He runs through a guy and then sprints. And then, they did the podcast. He's bragging about if he's healthy, he would have taken the end zone. I don't know if I'd go that far, but I don't buy that. Like the quickness and some of the other stuff, I think so much of that is just feeling it and seeing it. And when if you're a quarterback and your eyes are caught down the field and you're looking and you're waiting for stuff, like perhaps longer than you should, then you are now at a disadvantage with trying to escape or get away from things. And likewise, the opposite can be true, where if you escape from a clean pocket too early, you may miss out because you are not in a position to throw the football. So I think some of that, again, will take care of itself by playing, by being comfortable and being confident. And that to me is more important than anything else that we're talking about, which is why I keep stressing he's just got to be on the field. The 12 games is a huge deal. And every time he starts playing and like gets going a little bit, then something happens. So like the Tennessee game was great. And then there's a setback. The Arizona game was phenomenal. And yes, Arizona was terrible. I get it. But like the throw to Amari Cooper over the top to like ice that game was outstanding. And there were a lot of like smart decisions and good things. And then the Ravens game comes out, early part of the game, not very good. And then he's outstanding. And as everybody can remember, coming out of that game, everybody's going division. We're winning the division. It's all going well from here. And then everybody's gutted to find out he's out for the season because he's just getting the momentum. And now that we're separated from that, we've got that time to look away. You're sort of like back to that. What is he? For all the right reasons, he has to prove it. Like, it's entirely fair. I'm not suggesting that like because we're getting away from when he started to get momentum and then he goes down for the season. I think you have to have that sort of antiseptic look because you got to see it. But it's important to recognize that like the second he started getting going, something happened. So that's what's got it. We've got, for his sake, he's got to somehow get through that and not be dealing with injuries, be able to be healthy. Because here's the thing. If you look at like quarterbacks, for the most part, every year, quarterbacks who deal with injuries, you can almost immediately cross them off as to win the Super Bowl for an extended period of time. You've got to be healthy. You've got to be really lucky in terms of that. Doesn't mean you can't get dinged up a little bit and sort of deal with it. But like when you're doing that for 6 and 7 week stretches, like it really does take a toll, and it's difficult to like fix that during the season. So you do really have to get lucky with that, because not only did we see a ton of backup quarterbacks last year, but who are the guys who actually played the whole season?
Yep.
Those guys were in the Final Four. Those guys were ready to, contend for the Super Bowl. And that's just such a huge part of it. You can't do that when you are either battling pain constantly, or having to change how you play, or you're just not playing at all because you're hurt.
Yeah, and which kind of brings me back to, there's this overarching thought, and I'll get back to the video in a second, but like you can't tell him to change how he plays, and you want him to be, a certain way with running, but he has to stop taking hits, right? He has to be better at getting down and getting out of bounds, correct?
Yeah, he's got to evolve. He's got to, he's got to figure that stuff out.
Yeah.
On the best ways to win. I mean, that's why you get to see some of these quarterbacks who really come into their own closer to 30 or into their 30s than, their mid-20s.
Yeah.
It's a long growing process. And Patrick Mahomes has sort of thrown a lot of that out the window. And Tom Brady, to an extent, did that a little bit. But like he even went through that lull where he had to sort of go through some growing pains when he became the guy who had to sort of carry the franchise, as opposed to being on that rookie deal and being able to, on a loaded defense and all that stuff, where you're sort of the game manager type. We're hearing Watson talk and Quincy Avery talk about the game management portion. He's got to figure some of that stuff out. He's got to take some easy ways out, because the Browns don't need Houston Texans Deshaun Watson, because Houston Texans Deshaun Watson took all kinds of hits, had to take all kinds of hits because they couldn't run the ball. They couldn't do anything. They couldn't stop anybody, and had to go out and score 1 million points. Yeah. So, like, that was your whole thing. The Browns, you have a great defense. You can punt the ball away and be okay. You can you can give the ball to your playmakers and let them do it. And maybe you don't get that first down, but, like, you've got a team that can keep you in it, because part of it is just staying in it long enough, which is the Ravens game in a nutshell. Just stay in it long enough to figure it out and go. And if you don't turn the ball over and give them a touchdown, obviously I don't blame Deshaun Watson for the pick six. It just happened. But like, just stay in the game. That has been like what the Steelers have done. And obviously we want Deshaun Watson to be better than what the Steelers quarterback play has been. But the Steelers have gotten away with just hanging around in so many games and winning late. And certainly Deshaun Watson is a much better quarterback than that talent is. But like, just don't do dumb stuff. Don't hurt yourself, and you'll get those opportunities to make plays late in the game. Like, that is all it really comes down to.
Yeah. Yeah. If he manages it, and he's been good in late game situations. So, I mean, that's where he can make those throws that make a difference, is in close games late. Right. So, just getting there is huge. So, we'll listen to a little bit more of Chris and Ahmed here on Unbuttoned, talking about Deshaun Watson, ranked 24th on Chris's rankings this year.
That was what I wrote, right? A guy that I used to look at and go, man, he's so instinctive and it's next level and all of that. And it's like, ever since all this stuff happened, he's kind of lost his mojo or his aura about him, right? And he's just, again, it's very few drives or games that you can go, man, this is consistent good quarterback play and one good decision and throw after another. True. Not what you would expect from somebody from $45 million a year in a fully guaranteed contract.
For sure. So
right.
I would be so curious to know, and I don't know if we've heard a lot about it, and maybe not anyone's talking about it. just how the team reacts to him as opposed to a guy like Joe Flacco. Because, this is a ranking about physical traits and what they do on the football field, reading a defense.
But we talk about
Can you
leadership.
make
Exactly.
leadership.
Right.
I'm so fascinated, and you don't hear a whole lot of the players talk about it just because he hasn't been out there and they haven't had to talk about it. But, can he effectively lead that team?
I think he's got to put some good games together to start to go, hey, wait, I am the old Deshaun Watson, right? What do guys follow in the locker room? They follow the ballers, the guys who are the man, right? And that means you have to be the man on the field, and then, you're the man with the check you're getting every week. But if you're just getting the big check and you're not the man on the field, people are like, that's cool. You get a lot of money. Let's go hang out and do something and party, and you can pay. Yeah. But that doesn't mean you're the man, and we all, respect you that way in the locker room, right?
Yeah.
I don't think he has an issue as far as the teammates on the Browns following him as a leader. Do you?
No, but I think Chris has a point. You got to play well. He just has to. And yes, they can win. He doesn't have to come out and be an all-pro the first couple games. They got to win those games, and he's got to look like he's getting comfortable. Browns receivers and those guys have been able to produce with Deshaun Watson. But you want to see him start to turn that thing over because you don't want it to be in a situation where, if they don't see progress, I'm not suggesting that there's going to be some sort of revolt, but I would worry at that point if they look at him and go, is he going to ever be that guy?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yep,
that's where it's crazy, right? There's very few big time throws, very few. Okay. It's always looking for the one-on-one shot. It's never really playing within the system of the offense. It's always like, hey, wait, I have a combination over here. I'm going to take – I don't want to say that. I'm going to say it for the lack of a better way. I'm going to take the easy way out and just throw the one-on-one ball over here. And it's like, no. You have more options and things to work with over here. Now, you got to read it, and, it might be a little bit more difficult. But you can't just be like, I'm going to drop back and just throw it in the spot, and hopefully my guy gets it, right? That's just not going to get it done. It's just not, right? So that's where, I feel like, there's that aspect. The feel in the pocket is not what it used to be. He has, as I just talked about with Justin Fields, there is zero anticipation. Zero. He's actually worse than Justin Fields in that department.
And did that used to be something that Watson was able to do at a high level?
He could do it, yeah. Now it's like he doesn't trust himself, or I don't know.
I know what he's trying to say, but I've seen him anticipate more than that.
Yeah, I would agree.
What it is, but he wants to.
Why do you think the national media doesn't recognize the games like Arizona and Tennessee as quality performances?
Because those teams don't matter. So much of this, if he had more credibility, I think they would look more at that. But they're looking at Pittsburgh, and I don't blame him. He was not good against Pittsburgh. Yeah. And you get the roller coaster against the Ravens. The problem is especially this last season, that's basically it. The Bengals game was drowned, and then he was in the Colts game for half a dozen snaps.
Yeah.
So there's just not much to go on. So I can't blame him. I also can't blame him for lowering the ranking in part because he's only played 12 games. That is a factor. He needs to be on the field to be higher in these rankings. So it's very difficult to argue with it until he proves otherwise. I fully believe he has the ability to do it, but he's got to get comfortable fast.
Yeah.
See it before he throws it every time. Right. And that has been lost. So, that's where, I really don't know what to make of Deshaun Watson. It's a big year. It really is. And he is nowhere close to the old Deshaun Watson that we saw in Houston. And in fact, it was a disappointing year when I go back and watch it because I had more
even
hope.
Worse than you were ready for.
It was, right?
Wow.
And I feel like every time you go, oh, maybe this is something he can build on, he got hurt or just it didn't work out. And you just go, he looks good today, but it didn't work out that way. So, he's one of the harder guys to rank in this. I know what he's capable of, but I do seriously wonder if he's capable of regaining that form ever again. And I do think not only, with him being older, but I do have a feel that all this off the field stuff has affected his psyche and his aura as a football player, for lack of a better way to say it. And I think it shows with their football team. I don't think they're like, oh, we could go to the Super Bowl because we have Deshaun Watson. I think they're all like, we hope Deshaun Watson can be what he used to be. Then we can go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's a little bit of the boat they got to be in there right now.
And not to get all wishy-washy, but like what happened with him off the field, he never resolved it, right? And some of that was legal reasons, right? And your lawyer's telling you one thing, don't do this, don't say this, don't admit guilt, and I get all that stuff, right? But when you're in a locker room with a bunch of different players and you got to lead those players, you've also got to be the guy that can handle a situation like that and
you
do it
don't feel
gracefully.
like he totally squashed that or owned up to it.
It's like it's still it's a big unresolved black mark on him, on that organization.
Yes.
And it's like he doesn't owe, me an apology. He owes the victims apologies, obviously. He doesn't owe anything to anyone else, but he does. Like the thing that boggles my mind,
it would
the most,
go well in public opinion.
It would help
get
him.
people off
it
his
would
back.
help him.
Right. Agreed.
It would help him move
Right.
on from some of this stuff, but he just doesn't seem to have a willingness to.
All you got to know, right, is they didn't feel comfortable bringing Joe Flacco back.
Yeah.
That tells you all you need to know, really, when you really unpack it, right?
I totally disagree. Like, you got to put your quarterback in the best position to succeed. And if you're going to bring back a guy that the fans are going to be chanting for the first time he threw an incomplete pass, that's not a best position to succeed. I don't think it has anything. In my opinion. Go ahead.
Well, I would just say that there are reasons not to bring Joe Flacco back that have to do with the locker room, but there are valid reasons not to bring Joe Flacco back. He is going to be 39. The arm can fall off at any point. There is any number of quarterbacks throughout history that have had this happen to them at this age, where now he's going from barely throwing to he's going to have to throw a lot through practices and stuff. That may take a toll on him, because at the end of his time, like with the Ravens and the Broncos and some of those teams, like even the Jets a little bit, his arm was not as good as it was last year.
No.
It worked out for him in that way. So given his age, Jameis Winston is practically a decade younger than he is.
Yes.
He also has a very strong arm. He also can do some of the things in terms of volatility, even though Jameis takes it to the nth degree in terms of risk reward. But part of this is Joe Flacco did a great job. He also got boosted because Kevin Stefanski's really damn good at making quarterbacks look good.
Yeah.
And I don't have any reason to believe that won't happen with Jameis Winston, just because that's been the record, the track record for Stefanski. So It's fine. Like I do think that's part of the reason Flacco is not back. I'm not going to dismiss it entirely, but I also think there are valid reasons why you would want to go with a decade younger, younger quarterback with Jameis Winston, who has a little bit more mobility, who has a little bit more of these other things he can do. If Flacco gets hurt with the Colts, no one is going to be surprised. Or if his arm reverts back, no one's going to be shocked. It's just, that's the challenge with that. And we'll see where it goes. I hope the best for Joe Flacco, but you had to make that, you had to make a smart decision that wasn't just about Deshaun Watson. If Joe Flacco's 30 and we're doing this, then let's, then you can sit there and go, this is entirely about Watson. But there are other factors than this where you have to at least acknowledge them to be honest to the conversation.
Yeah, I agree. Some comments about the off the field stuff from Ahmed, and I don't want to dive too deep into that stuff, but the unresolved thing. At this point, I just feel like the further you get away from it and the more you can succeed on the field is your answer to, speaking on it at this point, I don't know how much good that would do him, personally.
I'm not his psychiatrist. I'm not qualified to do this stuff. I don't know what is and isn't bothering him from that angle.
Right.
The most I can say is I felt like he was trying to make $230 million throws, trying to get it all back in one play, trying too hard in times to be a playmaker rather than just making smart plays. You've heard him talk about these things. The unresolved stuff is don't get me wrong. It's a thing that there are people who are never going to believe in him as a result of that. I'm not going to tell him not to, but I don't have any way of knowing if somehow, like, that somehow making an admission or somehow what I don't know what we're trying to get here and what it will accomplish. I have no idea. Speculating on it seems like a waste of time. You want to bring in spirituality into this, so be it. That's not my deal.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
I think, Paul Spencer says in the chat, and kind of something that we've talked about too, but success on the field is Deshaun's best option for redemption at this point.
As he has said any number of times. That is his whole thing. So that might be part of why he's pushing so hard. I mean, that certainly could be part of it. But, like, if he did what he's accused of, like what are we talking about here? Like, what is he going to do? Like,
right.
So, is he going to suddenly go, here, I'm giving all the money to the people who claim this stuff? Like, how am I supposed to have a conversation at that point? Like, I have no way to interact with that. And all they're doing is sort of throwing stuff out there at that point.
Very fair.
If you're the man, like the man, do you think Patrick Mahomes would be like, and the Kansas City Chiefs would be like, I don't know if we should bring Joe Flacco back? He'd be like, what? Bring him back. I don't give a shit. I'm going to show him every day who the man is here.
Yeah.
Right? They didn't want to do that because Joe does have that kind of arm there. It's like, and then he had the fans and the little run last year and behind him and all that. They didn't want to deal with that. If he was really the man and the man in that locker room, they would have brought Joe Flacco back. But they didn't because of all the reasons we're talking about. And this is a shit or get off the year pot. Yeah. Shit or get off the year.
Yeah, either way.
For the Cleveland Browns and Deshaun Watson.
He was number 9 last year. He is tied with Ryan Tannehill for the biggest drop of any quarterback to appear on both last year and this year's list. First time that ever you have had Deshaun outside the top 15. There is some recent video of him throwing and not throwing at the Browns OTA, so let's see what you see here.
The first thing I noticed when I did see this the other day is, one, he looks a little thinner, which I like because I do think he's been a little thick the last few years, right? So that's something I definitely liked about it. And from these videos that I've seen so far, I don't know if I've seen this one right here. I do. Oh, okay. That's why I haven't seen it. It's a walkthrough. It's a walkthrough. Yeah. I have liked what I've seen throwing the football, right? You don't want to see quarterbacks crouching over at the waist, bending, right? You have to stay tall. You rotate through the football, and it's more about going around. It's not a baseball pitcher where you should end up folded like a lawn chair after your release. Hopefully he can fix.
We'll never get through the last one. So I agree. There are times where, like, what he's talking about, Deshaun Watson legitimately looked like a relief pitcher, like throwing off the rubber, where he's so stretched out and the arm is so far behind, and then it spikes into the ground where you're sitting there going, whoa. Now, some of that, I think, was trying to overcompensate for what he was dealing with in his shoulder, but it is definitely not something you want to see. Like, you want to see the weight forward as opposed to the weight coming from the back and going forward. You want to see a shorter motion. You want to see a lot of those things, which I agree with. Like, 100%. You look at some of those throws last year, even some of the ones that worked, and you're sitting there going, ooh, that does not look right. That is not how it's supposed to go. But to his point, it looks great. Now, if Air is on the schedule, I think Air is in trouble. I think the Browns will destroy Air this year if they come out on the field. But, beyond that, we'll see what happens when the bullets start flying, because that's when your mechanics truly are what they are, when you have to be under stress, when pads are on, and obviously even some of that may not happen until the regular season when guys can hit you. But his motion does look shorter. I do think that stuff's important. It does look better. His shoulder is stronger relative to what he's been doing with it. And yeah, I suspect he has lost a little bit of weight in his trimmer because all he could do for however long was stuff with his legs. So if that helped him, because there was a point, and Chris Sims has sort of talked about this, where he looked slower last year. Or the previous year when he was coming off the suspension. And I agree with him. Like, again, some of that comes down to feel, but when you haven't played and you're not in it, it becomes sort of difficult to identify what's right and what's wrong relative to NFL competition. And now we're 2 years into this. Like, we better have a damn good answer for what it's like, because that's got to be right.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so for the final video tonight, we are going to go to some local stuff. We usually go to the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show.
Under the umbrella.
Yes. This is the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, just a Brown show. Now, it's Garrett Bush and it's Quincy Carrier. And Quincy, has been on my show on All Eyes on Cleveland a couple times. I like Quincy. He has some good opinions. But this is a very interesting conversation about the offense here, and we can kind of talk about what we think about this because some yes and some no, I guess I'll say here. So let's dive into this.
OTAs is a thing that I already said. It don't really matter. Who cares? Myles Garrett don't show up for OTAs. Who cares? But there are a couple of people that actually should be worried about OTAs. I'll get Quincy's thoughts on it. And when we come up with this episode of the Ultimate Brown Show, that's not a thing. That is not a thing
for no leadership. No, honestly, you've been on football teams. The dude try to give leadership in spring. Oh, you don't like that dude.
Nah, we're not. If it take leadership for you to come do your job and to rush the passer, that's not a thing, bro. You got to get your mind together, man. Myles Garrett. If you waiting on Myles Garrett to come, you work hard because Myles Garrett is there. You in trouble. You in trouble, Q. But I will say this. Let's get to this one. Now we talked about this on Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show today, and we looked at it, and Elijah Moore is not in camp. Now look. I ain't looking at it like this from this angle saying Elijah Moore need to be at camp. We're not saying that. But I will say this. If you are David Bell, if you are a Woods, if you are a guy who a Cedric Tillman, if you're a guy that wants to get more playing time, if you're a Jamari Thrash, if you're one of those guys, you're going to be there with Deshaun Watson. All the quarterbacks is there. Dorsey is there. Is there a potential that somebody could get some minutes that was not available to get minutes? Like you think somebody could take advantage of the fact that, hey, I was at OTAs and I could make a couple plays and be a splash guy and hopefully make a contribution to this roster, even though Elijah Moore is not there?
I would say this. It's hard to do that when Deshaun's not really throwing full time, right? Like Jameis is out there when Deshaun is there. He's really doing mental reps. Sometimes he's throwing, sometimes he's not. It's a little weird that he's not there. He seems like one of them guys you just expect to be there. He's not of that class of player that kind of has the privilege to be out here not doing it. But I will say this, we don't know why he's not there, and that's why I will caution on going too hard on him for not being there, because it might not have anything to do about football.
Yeah, listen, I don't even look at. I look at it like this. I like to stay consistent. I don't care if none of them don't show up, right? But we do know that it's for some people, as you alluded to, there's a certain echelon that you got to get to for you to be not even a second thought. Myles Garrett, Batonio.
Just not talking about Myles Garrett not showing up, right? Like we was doing that. Remember last year, all the hot takes.
Myles Garrett got to show. I said, come on, man. He ain't got to come to none of that. I will say this. Now this year, more than anything, because there is a new offensive coordinator, and I've come to the conclusion that Dorsey is going to be calling these plays. Because there is a new offensive, he's calling these plays.
We should put a 20 on that because I don't.
Q, I've been trying to get you to be on board. We're gonna figure this out.
We'll put a 20 spot on it.
We're gonna put a $20 with a friendly.
Well, we can't say the currency, but we'll put 20 on it.
Yeah, we'll put 20.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Yeah, all that good stuff. But yeah, I just feel like it's a new camp. I feel like it's a new, I think if it was me, I'd be like, look, I need to have Dorsey find me a spot on this field. I need to find out. They gonna say, hey, G Bush can run all the curl routes, or G Bush, he really good at running this particular route, so you get your money off. For you, in terms of what the offense is, how much do you think is going to be shown?
All right. Before we get into this topic, the Elijah Moore thing. He's there now, right? So, but whatever. You and I have talked about it. Elijah Moore is a freaking grinder. Like, he is the grinder. Like, if him not being there doesn't bother me, and I don't think anybody's taking snaps away from him on the current roster, and I really don't.
Elijah Moore loves football to the point where if football was a person,
Yes.
there would be issues like restraining order, like he's psychotic in his love for football in like the best way.
Yeah.
It's possible he had real life stuff going on and that's why he wasn't there. But it would not surprise me in the least if Elijah Moore was not there at the first couple of days of OTAs because he was working harder than they were at OTAs because he's a lunatic who works out like 3 times a day.
He thinks like there's, and this is how you should think, but like I think he thinks like he could be the greatest of all time, or at least he approaches it that way. Like
I worry about Elijah Moore in a world where he does not have football. He's that committed to it. Like,
which is great.
It's easy to love the way he plays because he is intense. He posted a workout video within the last week or whatever, doing the stuff he does with cuts and stuff. And he's working. Like, he gets after it in a way that you know exactly what he's doing. It's not just like for show. That's just who he is.
Yeah.
Like they did one of those Browns Unbreakable or whatever the hell.
Unleashed
with him. And you're like, wow, boy, you got to tone it down.
Yeah.
Like easy.
Yep.
So I don't really care that he wasn't there for the couple days. He's there now for, if Dorsey wants to see Elijah Moore, he can pop on the tape and look at him doing stuff within the Browns offense. Now, in general, I think G. Bush got a lot right, like crushing it as far as his overall take on this. I do think that, like, one, coaches want players to be there because it just makes them feel better when they can see guys and know exactly where they're at. It gives them a little peace of mind. And obviously, I don't look for Miles to be leading in OTAs. The small benefit of Miles being at something like OTAs is that there is a slightly higher level of seriousness in anything he's doing. He's there. If you're a player trying to prove yourself, there is a sense of, oh man, I got to be on my P's and Q's because Miles is here. Like, that is a real thing. Is it like debilitating that he's not? No, absolutely not. Because again, he may be working harder than anyone, but I don't care. He could be on vacation. I'm not worried about Myles Garrett's preparation. But there is a small benefit. Now, the stuff G. Bush hits on that I think he's dead on with is young guys.
Yeah.
Auditioning in front of coaches and trying to put that little bug in their head going, okay, I need to see him do this when we get the pads on. I want to see what he looks like getting there. I got to make mental notes. I want to get him some reps, seeing if he can carry this over. Like, that absolutely is a thing you can do. And certainly, once you get past Amari Cooper, who, as far as I know, is still not there, Jerry Jeudy, who is there, and Elijah Moore, it is up for grabs. Like, there's expectations that Cedric Tillman will take a step forward. He's there. There's David Bell, who's trying to prove himself in year 3. He's there. Jamari Thrash looks interesting already. He's there. Like, I mentioned Michael Woods, that Landers kid, who's a gigantic human being.
Looks jacked.
He is a big boy. They're all there, and Njoku's not, but all the other tight ends are there. Like, yes, those are things. Like, Amari Cooper walks in the building. They're like, yeah, I know I got to get him the ball. David Njoku walks in the building. I know I got to get him the ball. I'm not like those guys you don't have to worry about. But it is an opportunity for these guys to be like, hey, I'm here. I'm working. Notice me. So we get those little things where we come into it. But, like, there are a lot of people not at Browns OTAs, like, or not participating in Browns OTAs that, it's easy to hammer in on some of these people, but, like, the sheer number of them, Bitonio, Garrett, Dustin Hopkins is not there. Like, that part I'm not worried about. As long as they are doing what they need to be doing for themselves, so be it. Like, as long as they're ready to go. Now, if they show up and you have, the John Harbaugh shaming his nose tackle for being too fat and kicking him out of practice, okay, then we have a conversation at that point. But like
Yeah.
for now, if these guys have a track record, some of them just believe in what they do more than what the team does in this stuff, or they have a trainer, or they have, this, that, and the other, whatever they do. Some of it, they don't live here and they've got kids. Like, there are real life reasons why you would be sort of like,
Yeah.
I'm going to do what I need to do. And then I'll be there when I need to be there, but I would be ready that those
Yeah.
are real things. Now, the part where G. Bush loses me, and obviously this has not been determined. I am fully on believing that Stefanski could call plays.
Yes.
Again, for reasons we've talked about previously, he adds so much. I think Stefanski is part of the reason they won games with 4 different quarterbacks last year, is because he can those. It's not the plays, although that helps. There are little things, and I know he's going to talk about that here shortly, but it's the little details, the little notes he can give that do help the quarterback, talking about situations and when they can be aggressive and when we sort of want to take the points and those other things. Those little notes, I do think, make a difference. And I do think that's a reason that they won those games. And ultimately, I think that's going to be the reason he ends up calling plays, because no one can come up with something else he can be doing that's going to be more valuable than helping his quarterback out between plays.
Exactly. And not to mention, I personally believe that he has a very good feel for sequencing and everything else.
Yes.
So
good. He's a good play caller.
He's a very good play caller.
I want them to revamp the offenses, which is what they're doing, to create more easy wins and do some things that make more sense for their personnel. But I want him to be the guy stringing them together. And those, I'll let G. Bush say it because he's going to be right, and I want to let him be as right as much as he can, because it's this is one of the best segments I've listened to him do. I would like to see more of this G. Bush.
Yeah. And this is a really interesting conversation about the offense, which is why we wanted to play this tonight. But, they get into this here, and I want to talk about it afterwards, but I'll let them talk for a minute.
I'm starting to think that Jay Crawford's a bad influence. He's a bad egg.
Yeah, I think so too.
Throughout the preseason and OTAs, because one of the things I've been disappointed in is we've been talking about this stupid offense for 2 and 3 years about how it's going to be different and how everybody going to be doing different stuff. I just didn't see that level of change throughout the year. How much do you believe that the offense is going to look and change as we look at this season?
It depends on how well you know what you're looking at.
That's it.
There's going to be more
right.
motion. Pre-snap, post-snap motion. There are going to be some
we
different
pause this
slight variations to formations that look.
I remember when the Steelers hired Matt Canada, and his calling card for why he was going to change things there, it was one word: motion. What did I hear from? I don't even remember what we were talking about. Oh, the Eagles. More motion.
More motion.
Browns, more motion. Don't get me wrong. I would like to see more things that give you pre-snap advantages, that help your quarterback out, that put guys in positions to succeed. Motion is not going to save your offense. You've got to have more than just, moving guys around more before the snap. I worry that we're getting into this thing now where we're because we can't really talk about the offense, that we're just boiling it down. Well, more motion. Okay. Pre-snap shifts. We're doing it. Hey, maybe with some orbit motion looks, some of these other things. I understand what people are trying to say, but my fear is for people who are consuming this, that they're going to hear this thing over and over and over to the point where it becomes meaningless, and it's not going to matter. Motion is good. Motion can do a lot of things for you, but it is not the single determining thing that's going to make your offense better or worse. And again, we talked about this for last year. I think a lot of the reason they stopped doing some of the pre-motion stuff was because of the offensive tackles. It puts a lot of stress on them with how that changes the defense and the ways the opponent can attack. And you did not want to mess with Jaron Christian and James Hudson at that point. They already had enough played. But yes, they need to run more motion than they did. They need to be more effective motion, I think, is more important to me, is what is the motion doing that's going to help your offense? Because there are a lot of teams, not so much in the NFL, although it happens, who run motion for the sake of running motion.
Right. Now, just to push back the slightest bit, I agree with you. It's going to be meaningless if people just say that about every offense. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. But, and there are reasons that the Browns were so low on the motion meter or whatever ranking. They were way down there, right? Last year. However, sometimes you just said, just running motion to run motion is what Stefanski said. I'm not just going to run motion to run motion. Well, sometimes, yeah, you kind of do need to do that because it does help your quarterback. It does move people around, and just having someone go in motion can set off indicators and keys for your quarterback in general. So sometimes just running a guy in motion, just to run a guy in motion, can help you identify what defense they're in, other things like that. Now, the more important things I would say are the shifts, motion adjacent shifts and things like that, where guys are doing so to manipulate leverage, pre-snap, and things like that, right? I think that's where teams are winning more so with that kind of motion and shifting before the snap. But there is a direct correlation with more motion to higher scoring teams, like flat out last year. So
the other trap you don't want to get into is you motion and it gives away your snap count. Like you've got to be able to be cognizant of that, and obviously you can have guys stop and do more than one and all that other stuff. But if you start getting into that habit and you start getting a rhythm, then you get one of those where the guy times up his blitz or whatever, and suddenly they blow up the play and it's a disaster.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it's much more sophisticated than just more motion. I agree.
Yes.
So
it just sounds odd when I keep hearing that.
Yeah. You did agree right when he said it depends on what you recognize, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's
absolutely. For some people, running the ball just means running the ball.
Correct.
You're either running inside or you're running outside. There's not a whole lot of delineation there. The percentage of plays that they run, which I think are going to be more gap. I know they talk about that a little bit more. I think it's going to be a heavier gap scheme. I think Zach Zinter is a hint that it's going to be a heavier gap scheme, as Quincy sort of talks about, as opposed to being more. I don't love this team, the personnel this team has for wide zone. I don't. I think it's more suited for inside zone. I think it's more suited for power, counter, trap. I loved what the Browns did with trap this past year. I would like to see more of those things. Where you get your linemen moving and let them sort of block down more, which I think would be really helpful for DeJuan Jones, really helpful for Ethan Posick, and Wyatt Teller. Like those guys would benefit from that type of stuff, as opposed to trying to have them constantly hit moving targets can get them in trouble. So yes, if you don't know what you're looking at in some ways, it can all look like the same stuff. And it's either good because it's working or it's bad because it's not.
I think a lot of people think like, oh, they're going to change the offense, so they're going to pass on every freaking play, right? Like, I think that's what some people feel like, and when they don't see that, they're going to be like, well, they're still running the ball, so it's the same, but it might not be. You know what I mean? So
there just aren't that many. There just aren't that many truly different offenses in the NFL. Like you look at college and you look at high school, and you're like, you can play teams in back-to-back weeks that look absolutely nothing alike. Between the hash marks being so tight and some of the other things, like there's only so much you can really do in the NFL. And yeah, there are teams that look unique and there are teams that look different. Yeah. But like overall, there is not that much that you can do. It's a lot of dressing things up. It's a lot of making, trying to move the eyes of the defense and trying to do things of that nature. But like, you're not going to suddenly go play a team who's running the wing T and the option versus a team who's going to be a spread team. Like that doesn't happen at this level.
Yeah. This is interesting stuff from Quincy here. So, and Garrett. So let's get a couple more minutes of this stuff in here.
Look very familiar. But the concepts are the concepts. They're not going to change all of the concepts that they run or things like that. It's just going to be variations on how they're asked to be processed and how they're asked to be executed from the wide receiver standpoint. I think there's going to be a little bit more freedom for some guys in this offense when it comes to what routes they run when they can break off routes versus certain types of coverages. And that thing, like I think, remember the whole Odell Beckham controversy over he was freelancing or whatever it was that people accused him of doing. Yeah, that's not going to be a thing because that's going to be something that they expect out of their wide receivers in this offense. it's going to be different in how it's processed and how it's executed. But I wouldn't go out here thinking that you're going to see them in wildly different formations and it's going to look like you running a completely different offense. That's what they're changing. Deshaun Watson, they've been running concepts Deshaun Watson likes. They've just been asking him to run it in a way that he's not familiar with running those concepts. So it's a change on that, which seems like it's slight, but I think that's probably one of the bigger changes you can make. It's not a super visual change, but it's there. So yeah, I'm with you on this where I don't think it's gonna be so different that it's gonna look like they're running a completely different offense. They're still gonna have some staples in there, but how it's processed is gonna be different. Like, when you look at Baltimore, they changed offensive coordinators. It's not a completely different offense that they're running there in Baltimore. It's just a change in the philosophy of how routes are put together. That changed there, right? But when you watch them play, they're still in a lot of pistol. They're still running the same concepts that worked really well with Lamar Jackson, still utilizing the middle of the field. It's just a different way to get to that's more comfortable for the wide receivers to be able to work in space. And I think it'll be a similar type change to that.
Yeah, and look, I tell you, people,
I don't think it can't, like, to your point before, it can't look that different. They already were at like 78% 11 personnel. How much different can it look, right? I mean, if they're not going to, they're going to be in more 11 personnel than they already were. They were already up near the top of the league, right? Like, so yeah, a lot can change, but it's going to look, to his point, I think some of it's going to look the same formationally, but it may be very different in the way that they're executing it.
Sure. I mean, the Ravens are a great example. You want to keep the stuff that's working. Like, you don't want to get rid of that stuff because why would you? It's working great for you. What you want to do is get rid of the crap that wasn't working. It's pretty simple. Right. Like, how much of that is really changing the offense and how much of that is just emphasizing the stuff that works, playing to your team's strengths. It may not look all that different, although there may be some philosophical changes in terms of like the amount of sort of decisions wide receivers are making. They have more agency in this offense, and then emphasis as to where the ball is going. Like, Ken Dorsey wants to get the ball down the field more. Like, that is a thing he has made a point of in his career. So maybe we'll see some of that, but like, it may just be like you're calling a play, 10 times as opposed to, 5 times, and vice versa on some concepts, or some concepts, hopefully wide zone, or it is either very much minimized or just gone in favor of just hammering things that they are very good at, and just getting more efficient at those things, or introducing a few things that they haven't done that they feel is more conducive to what this team has. Like, again, there's only so many ways you can change things up. It's all about how you dress it up and how you teach it in terms of where, if we're talking about the quarterback and the receiver, what's the receiver reading and what's the quarterback reading? That may change slightly. Who's the guy they're reading, or some of that stuff. But ultimately, there's only so much you're going to be able to negotiate in terms of that. There will be enough of a difference that most people will probably see a little bit, but ultimately there will be inevitably, if this offense does not come out firing, they'll be like, well, they're running the same offense again. And here's what I would say: they can't, because those people aren't here anymore. Right. Alex Van Pelt is not here anymore. Like, Stump Mitchell's not here anymore. Like, that's what I was just gonna say. Yeah. Unless they're literally saying, hey, Ken, here's Alex Van Pelt's playbook. Learn it. Yeah. Come on. They're obviously going to be doing some things differently, because that was the whole point.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. And I was going to say, and the idea that I think the idea that they want to give Deshaun a more spread out view of things and make him feel as comfortable as possible is a big part of this, don't you?
Well, it's that. It's also what you can do with the run game off of that. Like, the Browns have this weird collection of talent where they've got some really big bodies and they can spread them out. Like, in that way, you can sort of talk yourself into this notion of like the AFC North style spread, where they've got a bunch of 200-pound plus receivers and a big ass tight end and all these other things. And then you can also go to Jerry Jeudy and Elijah Moore being speedier guys and being able to use personnel like that. Like, you can adjust to the situation, that can deal with climate, deal with what defenses have and don't have. Kevin Stefanski has been big on this since he arrived here, being able to adjust his personnel and sort of mold his offense based on what the other team has and doesn't have, which is exactly what we should want. But like, I'm very intrigued at the notion of Amari Cooper, David Njoku, Cedric Tillman, and like, let's say Jerry Jeudy for this instance, are out there spread out, and one of those guys is sub 200 pounds. Like, what does the defense do with that? And then being able to go the opposite and going smaller and faster and being able to, push on those buttons. And if you're running the ball with a bunch of big 200-pound guys out there that can potentially block or just create space for your back, like there's an opportunity for them to gain yardage that way. Take the freebies. Like, I certainly don't want to run Tennessee's offense, but I love the ability to create that spacing where, in their case, they had a running back running against 5 and 4-man boxes at points. And it looks great. Like that, being able to recreate that on the NFL stage, not going to happen. But still, if you can get a 6-man box and it's, your back has to now make one guy miss, you're going to take those numbers all day long. And then if they have to adjust because you're running the ball well, you do the opposite and take advantage of the numbers on the outside. So like, those are the things they want to get to with a spread out look.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so a little bit more here.
All the time. I don't feel like when I say Dorsey's going to have the play calling, it's not going to be that big of a difference. Like, all the coaches are going to contribute to the pool of plays that they're going to call each and every Sunday. So he'll have input for that time period, right? He'll even have input on, here's our 2nd and short packages. Here's our 3rd and long packages. Right. Like, it'll be a menu of different plays that they can pick from and choose to call. So even if Kevin Stefanski is calling the plays, you can still see the fingerprints of Dorsey on what you want to do. Here's the thing I'm thinking. I do believe that there will be some different things that are different. At times when we would see run plays back in the day where it was, a second and medium, sometimes I do think there would be throws. There'll be throws at certain points in time. They may use the short throw as a extended part of the running game. So I do think you might see that, but I don't think it's going to be anything dramatic where you look up and you be like, oh my goodness, they're running a run and shoot now. No, I don't think that's going to be it.
Yeah. I think some people are like, oh, we're going to be in shotgun all day and all that. They're going to be like, they were in 11 a lot last year when Deshaun Watson was out there. It kind of changed when Joe Flacco went out there. But, I think it's going to be just the processing part of it's going to be different, right? It's not going to be so strict on like, okay, he gets to his 5th step. He has to get rid of this ball on this hitch. Like, that's been the stuff where I'm like, that's where the wires have crossed with this whole transition. You just want Deshaun to be able to process things in the way that he's comfortable processing them. And that doesn't mean that he goes downfield all the time, but it does mean that he can see things a little bit clearer and have that time to see things clear. You're going to ask more out of your offensive lineman for sure when you're doing it that way. But I think that's the way they're going to be doing it.
And speaking of offensive linemen, we're going to jump into the offensive line play. We had a conversation, about a second ago. We talked about Jed Wills and some things that we've been seeing out of your offensive linemen. We'll talk about what do you see from them in the OTAs. We'll also get to overall, like, who's guys that you, may see as guys that may be very pivotal for what the Browns want to do, given the fact that they're going to change the way that they play a little bit. We'll talk about the offensive line coach. Is there a big deal that Callahan is not going to be there? And will the Cleveland Browns be considered a finesse team or a hard-nosed team that likes to?
I can't imagine with this team that they become some sort of finesse team.
I don't care. I want to be the team that scores the most points every week. That's it. Sure. I don't care about labels. Like, don't get me wrong. I think they're going to play.
They have an identity, though.
I think they're going to play heavy gap. I think they're going to get guys double teams and all this other stuff, which is, a naturally power offense. I've always described the Browns sort of as a power offense because of the receivers. Like, because they have these big guys, big strong guys out there, the AFC North type receiver. I've always looked at this as a power offense. I think everything they want to do is power. So I don't worry about that stuff. But here's what I would say, and this is some of the best I've ever heard from G. Bush. I wish I got more of this. I think part of what we're going to learn watching Ken Dorsey and what his impact is on the offense is going to show us the impact of what Alex Van Pelt was having on the offense. Yeah. I think a lot of people who, would cite, I don't know what Alex Van Pelt does because they always associate everything with Stefanski, are going to find out what Alex Van Pelt did for good and bad. There were things that worked he did that are probably not going to be in there as much. There are things that he did that were not working, particularly that last season, and showed you why the Browns wanted to make this move. Now, hope the same is also going to be true where not everything Ken Dorsey does is going to be great. But I think we're going to be able to sort of, one, see what Ken Dorsey, the impact is the offense, as G. Bush pointed out. And by virtue of that, find out just what Alex Van Pelt's impact was on the offense on the opposite. So that will be sort of informative from that standpoint. But that is the discourse we should be having. Yes, play calling. It's going to be a whole bunch of people involved, but really I still expect it will be Stefanski because of all the reasons I've laid out. Ken Dorsey is going to be in charge of the game plan first and foremost. Kevin Stefanski will certainly be involved, but I promise you, and Jay Crawford's not here to say, well, the owner made them do this. Yeah. This is why I think this is what smart commentary sounds like to me, because you're looking at this from the standpoint of why would Stefanski make this change? Because he wants these guys in here and wants them to have their own voice because he wants to evolve the offense. Now, I might quibble a little bit with the pass versus run percentage-wise. I won't be surprised if it's pretty similar. Part of that will be to try to help get Deshaun Watson comfortable. But it's also just who they are. Now, if they're not running the ball well and they're passing the ball better, it makes more sense to use the pass to set up the run. But ultimately, it may be a week-by-week thing. But, part of that is one of the biggest questions I have for this offense is the running game. That is the offensive line element and how good are they going to look? And then the backs. And whatever is going to happen or isn't going to happen with Chubb, I still assume he will not be there to start the season. So is that Jerome Ford, Deontay Foreman, Nyheim Hines? What does that look like? Because if it's effective, that could do a whole lot for this offense. And make everybody feel instantly better about what this offense can achieve. But overall, got to see it. Got to see it happen. Got to prove it. But, that is what I would love the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show to be. As far as when they're talking about the Browns, I'm not holding my breath because I think there is an element of trying to just be the loudest guy and all this other crap. But that was really, really good content.
Yeah, very good. Quincy's always excellent. G. Bush, good there. So let me we're going to get out of here. This has been another edition of the React on the OBR Streaming Network. If you're watching on YouTube or you're curious, I saw somebody just asked about the YouTube feed. This is on YouTube right now. It's actually at youtube.com/AllEyesOnClee, which will actually be the Orange and Brown Report at some point. So go ahead and subscribe, and this will be the YouTube page. Thank you all for who tuned in tonight and participated in the chat. I'll leave you with this question, Pete. Final thoughts as we get out of here. You mentioned the Nick Chubb thing. Did it sway your mind at all to see those figures on his, to see the exact figures on his incentives? Because the incentives look like he would have to play from week one.
Well,
to achieve many.
Subscribe to the OBR. Go check out Jack's work. It's outstanding reporting so much as is reporting, but he got the details of what they want to know. It does not change a thing for me.
Okay.
One, the number, I'm not going to, spill the tea on any of this, but I will just say, if Nick Chubb is Nick Chubb, those numbers are achievable without being there the whole season, just based on what he's done in the past. I think he can get to those numbers without too much trouble. The touchdowns might be tough. If he's not there for a large part of the season, but overall, and they may be able to sort of load those up because they want to get him those short yardage carries. We'll see. I'm still pulling for Mike Hall to get those short yardage carries, but we'll see. But ultimately, I could easily see Chubb miss time and still achieve a lot of those numbers.
Okay.
But it's at least interesting. It feels
is.
aspirational to me, but I'm here for it. And I'm not, I'm trying to be realistic. I'm certainly I'm not ruling out the possibility that Nick Chubb is a mutant and has the power to heal himself in a way that other people don't because he's already done it. I'm hoping for it, but I'm just trying as best as I can to be realistic about expectations because the things I don't want to see are
too early
to be wrong. And he's out much longer than some people are thinking.
Absolutely.
Week 1 just seems improbable to me. And then the other part is that he comes back too early and we get a completely, unsatisfying version where everybody's now upset at the Browns, at Nick Chubb, at everybody else because he's just not the player that he wants to be. And I don't want that to happen for Nick either. I want him to be the best possible version of himself. And I don't know what he's capable of coming off this latest injury, but whatever 100% of that is, I want him to be at 100%.
Yeah. Take as long as you need, right?
Yes.
So I agree. Great job, Pete. As always, terrific analysis. This has been another edition of the React. Go subscribe, like Pete said, to the OBR so you can check out that article from Jack Duffin. Terrific reporting. As always, it's in the link below to subscribe to the OBR. Thank you all for watching, participating. For everybody over at the OBR, knocking out terrific pieces every day. For Pete Smith, my name is Brad Ward. Have a fantastic evening. Go tell a friend. Keep coming back. We are out.